Hi, this is Christina Yonkman, and I'm going to share my Module 4, Religion in Schools Current Trends. Good evening. This is Christina Yonkman, and I want to thank you for allowing me to be here tonight for the board meeting. I am a building leader here at Garden City Achieve High School, and I understand that the board is looking at their religious policies in the handbook and the district guidelines. And so I'm really excited to share some information that I have found with some research that I've done. And also I'm going to share with you some of the information from the U.S. Department of Education. So again, thank you for letting me be here, and I look forward to working with you on this topic. I am going to share with you some court cases, and that'll kind of give you an understanding of the background, the history, and how some of the laws and guidelines have come into play. So we're going to start first of all with prayer and the pledge. And so the first one we're going to look at was in 1962, there was a court case that prohibited the reciting of the school-sponsored prayer in public schools. And that's where it all started. And then there was a court case more recently in 2004 that permitted the reciting of the pledge with the words "under God" in the public schools. Now you have to understand that at one time "under God" was added to the Pledge of Allegiance, and so that's what brought this court case come to light. Okay, next I would like to share with you how are school officials and student speech is affected by religion in schools. So we're going to start with a court case, Lee and Weissman in 1992. It basically stated that a clergyman's benediction at a public school event would violate the separation of church and state. Another court case was with a school board in 1996, and basically this stated that prayer at a school activity is allowed when a student is acting independently with no influence from the school. And so that's what is important with that case. Okay, now I would like to share with you a little bit about religion in our curriculum. And if I understand right, this is one of the big areas that you're going to be looking at. So the first one I would like to share with is Epperson versus Arkansas, and this was in 1968. They prohibited the teaching of human evolution in public schools. And I know you're all aware that there's been a lot of controversy over this topic over the years. And then again in 1987, another court case, it struck down a law that required balanced treatment of evolution science and the creation of science. And we're going to talk in more detail about curriculum here as we continue, and I'll refer back to our school policy also. Okay, next I'd like to visit with you about the rights in and out of the classroom. We're going to talk about the rights of students, parents, and administrators. And that's really the whole reason for this policy as far as the religion in schools is we want to make sure that we are protecting the rights of our students and their families, and we're protecting the rights of our staff. So let's start with the rights of students. These are 4 basic guidelines that they have come up with, and that is that students acting on their own have the same right to engage in religious activity just like they do any other activity or club in the school. Students may offer prayer before meals or on school grounds for religious purposes to the same extent as other students who assemble together for other purposes. Students may not engage in religious harassment. In other words, they can't push their religion upon other students. And schools cannot show favoritism for or against students or groups based on their religious identity. Okay, now we're going to look at the rights of the parents. Parents have the right to shape and control the education of their children, and this gives them the right to choose whether they put them in a public or a private setting, whether private schools are religious or not. And then last, we have the rights of teachers and administrators. As public school employees, we retain our right for free exercise of religion, just like everyone else. However, public schools can regulate the religious expression of teachers during those instructional hours and when students are required to be present. And we're going to talk more about that here in detail. Okay, let's move on to equal access. We're going to talk about the principle of equal access with another court case. And in 1981, Widmore versus Vincent stated that schools cannot prohibit the use of its building and grounds for worship or Bible study. So in other words, when another organization or group wants to have a club or an event in the building, the schools also have to allow religious events, equal access. And that brings us to our Equal Access Act of 1984. This forbids public schools from receiving federal fundings if they discriminate against clubs or deny them equal access to their facilities based on their religious viewpoints. Okay, next, I would like to talk about our funding and the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, which is the ESEA. So we're going to start with the certification process. Schools, in order to receive their funding, they must certify every year. And what this is basically saying is that they have a policy in place that prevents or that does not prevent or deny anybody to participate in public prayer, and that's the protected prayer laws in their schools. So that has to be certified every year to get their funding. Next, I want to talk in detail about our constitutional principles when this comes to prayers. And this is where you're going to be finding more information in our local district, the board policies, and your local board handbook. And so as I'm talking about these, you can refer to your handbook sections IKC, IKD, and KI. That's when we talk about the teaching and curriculum. So I want you to keep that in mind, maybe make a note of that so that you can refer back to that when you get ready to make some of your decisions. So we're going to start with prayer during non-instructional time. And it's really important that the board understands that students may pray when they're not engaged in school activities or instructions. They're also allowed to have their Bibles, Qurans, other biblical books. And they can say grace before a meal, and they can pray or study religious materials with other classmates during recess, lunch, or other non-instructional time. So that has to do with the non-instructional time. Now let's go to organized prayer groups and activities. Students may organize prayer groups like See You at the Pole, just like any other extracurricular activity. Teachers, administrators, and other school employees, when they're acting in their professional capability, they are prohibited by the First Amendment from encouraging or discouraging prayer. However, before school or during lunch, they may meet with other teachers and engage in their own Bible study or conversations regarding religion. Some schools will have moments of silence, and if they do, students are free to pray, or they don't have to pray during this time. It's just important that school employees do not require, encourage, or discourage it. Accommodation of prayer during instructional time. Schools do have the discretion to dismiss students to off-school religious instruction, provided that the school does not encourage or discourage any of that instruction. So if a student needs to leave campus for a religious exercise, including prayer, then those students may be excused for that. Prayer during class assignments. Teachers need to allow students to express their belief about religion in the homework, and at the same time, teachers may not judge them based on these, so they need to be very neutral in their perspective on that. Student assemblies and non-curricular events. If student speakers come to the school, they need to be selected based by not using the religious perspectives. And to avoid any mistake on this, the school needs to endorse that they have a neutral disclaimer and that the speaker is there and is not the school's speech. Prayer at graduation. Schools may not mandate or organize prayer at graduation or select speakers based on their religious preference. However, when it comes to baccalaureate ceremonies, again, they cannot mandate it, but the school can make the facility available, and that is up to individual students if they choose to do that, and organize it without the school's organization involvement. So that's a lot of information there. And again, this all has to do with the principles regarding prayer. So now let's move on to our principles related to religious expression. When it comes to literature, students have a right to distribute literature to other people on campus, just like any other club or organization shares their information. When teachers look at teaching religion, public schools may not provide religious instruction, however, they may teach about it. So this is going to be more like in our history textbooks. And although public schools may teach about religious holidays, including the religious aspects of those holidays, and may celebrate the other non-secular aspects of holidays, they may not observe a holiday as a religious event or promote such observance by students. So in other words, it has to be fairly general, just kind of a general discussion and teaching of it. This next part, student dress, this is another part of the handbook. All of our buildings here in the district have student handbooks, and they talk about dress code. And so student dress code and policies as far as religion. As a school, we may not single out religious attire in any way. Students may display their religious message of items on their clothing, just like they can any other type of message on a shirt that is allowed in the school. And religious excusals. When a student wants to leave campus for a religious activity, for example, some religions require their students to go and pray at certain times. As a school, we must excuse this for the students. Okay, last part of this section I want to talk about is the Equal Access Act, and I just mentioned it briefly earlier. But this is designed to ensure that student religious activities are given the same access to school facilities as other student secular activities. All right, so that kind of finishes up as far as the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So in closing here, I would just like to share a little bit about how I felt this presentation helped with my knowledge, and hopefully it has helped open up your guys's, maybe opened up some questions, will help with your knowledge as you start looking at the different guidelines and policy here for the district. So this assignment has demonstrated correlation to CLO 6.3 by allowing me to look at laws and regulations regarding religion in education. Of course, I was able to present the information to my local board and superintendent and explain how important it is to apply these laws in our district so that our students are treated consistently, fairly, equitably, and ethically. I also want to make sure that everyone understands how imperative it is to stay up to date on these laws and to update policy as needed. Relevant. During this assignment, it has helped me understand the laws regarding religion in education. I was able to see how the law written in my district school board policy compared to the laws that were already shared here in my presentation. The articles provided detailed information which helped me understand that better and how to apply that within the district. My reflection. As a building leader, it is my responsibility to make sure my staff and students are protected when it comes to these laws. And as their leader, I will do two things. I will keep them informed of the local, state, and federal laws. And secondly, I will take any concerns or changes that's needed to our board for consideration. And here is a list of my references. And again, I referred to the Pew Research Center, the U.S. Department of Education, and then our local board policies. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation on religion in schools, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you.